Hello, Merrimack. This is Josh Moore. This is Walking Tall. You might remember me from my father's TV show, The Impact Zone. This show is pretty interesting. I would say probably by the end of it, you might either love me or hate me. Either one's okay. I get it a lot. But the purpose of the show is God and government. I'll probably have more shows later on relating the two, but like I said, the purpose of the show is to relate God and government and how these two work together. God creating government and government working underneath men. So it's pretty cool. I have an interest in this subject a lot, politics in general. But I feel like there's a disconnect from our generation. A lot of people don't know what they believe. There's no foundation in anything. People have misplaced principle. They've abandoned it for a new perspective. And I want to clarify some things. This show is going to touch up on a few points. There's not going to be any specific topic other than God and government. Like I said, new shows will touch up on those more specific issues in relation to the two. But I want to touch up on a few things. There's a first point on my iPhone. Yay! Using technology. The purpose of government. I want to talk a little bit about that because I feel like so many times, well, even nowadays, we elect leaders that, frankly, will lie straight to our face. I won't say who, but I'm sure you could probably guess because you know whether or not they're telling the truth. And it's really bothersome. I'm sure to the folks viewing probably right now, it's really bothersome. Nobody likes being lied to. I will say, however, just to give you kind of a background on where I stand on the issues in general, I am, as it's called today, known as conservatism. That's my point of view in government. Uniformly, we believe that God has a hand in government. He has an affair with how things are run, the way things go on. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the purpose of government. 1 Peter 2:13 through 17 in the Bible says, "Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. This is the will of God." Hear that? The will of God. Ready? "That by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of the foolish people." I will go on a little bit further with this verse. I'll go back to that. "Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, and honor the emperor." So this part right here, this is the will of God, that by doing good you shall put to the silence of the ignorance of the foolish people. That's not saying through our government that we sit there and tell everybody to shut up. Get out of my face. I don't want to hear what you have to say. You're an idiot. If we did that, that's against the Constitution. If we did that, we would probably get shot or hurt, punched, whatever. I will let you know I don't do that. I probably have come across that way before to people, but I don't like doing that because that's not the way it should work. Especially as a Christian who I'm supposed to love everybody, and I do. I love people. I want to help people. That's what I'm here to do, and give them truth. But specifically, when we do good, when we follow by the Scripture, we are supposed to be giving people truth. And by standing up for what we believe in with our principles and the foundation of Jesus Christ, we should be silencing the ignorance. That is a product of it. We're not telling people to shut up. We're saying, look, here's the truth, and ignorance is pushed out. I feel like so many times, and I've actually had conversations with people before, where a lot of Christians will say, "Hey, this is God's will that such and such be elected," or whatever, whoever it may be. Who God wants elected is by His children. And what I mean by that is, whoever's running, you should pick what they believe in based off in relation to God's word. It should line up. What they believe should line up with the Bible. Okay? Now, sometimes you get people who don't line up with it at all, and that's unfortunate. You pick who's there, and we go with the flow, and we talk to people, we go back grassroots, and we start voting people back in who should be there. But that aside, I feel like so many times that's what people go to. They go and they blame it on God's will that such and such get voted in. And that's simply not the case. Remember, the government is built to punish evil and do good and help the good people out. That's what it's supposed to do. Now, I have a little passage here. Glenn Beck, yay! People are probably like, you read him? Yes, I do. It's by Ayn Rand, who is a philosopher and an author born in Germany. People get mad at me. I believe it's Germany. He came over to America and wanted to get involved in Hollywood and do a lot of things. She wrote something that really struck me because it was really, really cool, and it made a lot of sense. It says, "The government was set to protect man from criminals, and the Constitution was written to protect man from the government. The Bill of Rights was not directed against private citizens, but against the government. As an explicit declaration that individual rights supersede any public or social power." That's really interesting, huh? Really, really interesting. I was actually reading earlier, and there was a small debate that pops up where people talk about the Declaration of Independence and how it doesn't really mean much. I mean, it's the Declaration of Independence, but it's not like I've heard different arguments. It's not a legal document. I can't remember quite who it was. I'll have to go back and check. But it was said that the Declaration of Independence gives the Constitution substance. In other words, the Constitution doesn't mean much until the Declaration of Independence is in place. Now, in a further show, I might dedicate the show to reading the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which I, personally have read through all of it, Bill of Rights, you know. I haven't quite read through all the Federalist Papers, but because it's a lot of them. But they're really interesting documents, and as Americans, we should be reading them. We should know what's in them. You know, we should have the information down. You don't even have to know it all. You just know a little bit of it. You know the amendments, know kind of the basis of what they're all talking about. We're not required to remember everything. Some people do, and that's totally cool. That's awesome. But I just wanted to establish that what the government is supposed to do. And 1 Peter really described it. And if you want to go look it up, it's 1 Peter. 1 Peter. I'm trying to remember now here. Hang on a second. What do we look at? 2:13 through 17. There you go. 1 Peter 2:13 through 17. And it is the authority and government. Now, one thing I did want to hit before we move on to the next point was this. I've talked to people before, and they say, you should be submissive to any government that comes in. You should be submissive to who's over you, absolutely. But we are supposed to vote in people that are willing to represent us in a proper way. In a way not only the Constitution tells us, but a way that God established government. Because God did establish government. It's a tool that He uses to govern man and to get us through our junk, if you will, help govern us and give us some substance in a nation. And America was the first one to do it the way we did as a republic. But it's not God's will that we suffer as a nation. If you read the Declaration of Independence, there's a lot in it. You should really go back and check it out because it talks about the tyranny that King George was putting Great Britain under. It went through everything, and it was a whole list of stuff. And a lot of it was very similar to what we're going through nowadays, even today in our society. And it's frightening. It really is. But I highly recommend you go read it for yourself for right now because it's very, very interesting. We have to know the role of government. You know, we have to know it, and we have to be dependent on what our knowledge is of it. We can't be dependent on government as we see it right now. So my next point is our founders were God-fearing men. Now I'm going to go ahead and read 2 or 3 quotes here from some founders, and they're really interesting, and I'll go on and kind of talk about this topic a little bit because it's really interesting. All of the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion, and morality are indispensable. That is George Washington. We have this day, 4th of July, restored the sovereign to whom all men ought to be obedient. He reigns in heaven, and from the rising to the setting of the sun, let his kingdom come. Samuel Adams. The Congress of the United States recommends and approves the Holy Bible for use in all schools. That was the United States Congress in 1782. Now, there are more Founding Father quotes all over the place. You can find them online anywhere you go. But there are a few things I'd like to touch up on this because there's some real serious misunderstanding of what's said out there. Number one, a big one that I'm sure you guys have heard of, is separation of church and state. I've studied separation of church and state for a little while, and I just want to explain a little bit real quick. I won't go into too much because it's a history lesson that could go on forever. But it started with Thomas Jefferson in 1802 in January, writing a letter to the Danbury Baptist Church in Connecticut. And in this letter, the church wrote to Thomas Jefferson because they were fearful that the First Amendment, freedom of religion and speech and so on and so forth, was too broad. They were afraid that eventually the government was going to take over and kick the church out and usurp its power and voice. And the church was scared of that. They were frightened of it, which they should be because the governments in the past had done that. And Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter back to them saying, I feel just as you do. I want to make you feel a little bit better by saying this, that there should be a wall of separation between church and state so that the church is protected from the state, not the state from the church. It's been misinterpreted. It was in a case in, I believe, 1947. I can't quite remember the name of the case. You go look it up. It's actually on wallbuilders.com. But it's really interesting that this issue came about because now it's been totally misinterpreted. Because as we know, our foundation is through biblical principle, Judeo-Christian beliefs, and the majority of our founding fathers, if they were not involved or if they were not Christians, they certainly believed in God and at least believed that He had a hand in it. And very few of them were that. The majority of them, 52 of the 55 signers of the Constitution were active members of their church, and they had a hand in what was going on. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit, because separation of church and state has just been blown out of proportion. You can't, however, find it anywhere in any document, anywhere. First Amendment, where it talks about the establishment of a religion, the religion is talking about denominations because there was another letter that Thomas Jefferson had wrote, and he specified what that part of the Constitution meant. He was basically saying, no, we don't want a national church being established as it was in England. We don't want a national church being done that way. We're a nation that allows any American to serve whatever God he wants to. But we as a nation, our founding principles are based on the Bible. It doesn't mean, again, that we have a national church. Now, they are allowed to have state churches. You can have a state church or whatever, which is funny because I don't have it with me right now, but the Massachusetts Constitution was pretty specific about what they believed, God being in government and being based on morality and religion. And the same, which goes even further with North Carolina, was really cool, actually. If you go and read that, go look at North Carolina's constitution, state constitution. It basically says that if you don't believe in God and you don't hold the truths of the Bible to yourself, and don't have morality, then we don't really want you having a public position in office. We don't want you having a position in public office because you don't have any principles to stand on. You have no foundation. You can flip-flop on your issues, like some people have done recently. Now, coming back a little bit to New Hampshire, because that's the state we're in, we do have something similar to that, very similar. At the very beginning of the Constitution, it doesn't specifically state anything about religion, but if you go to the first Article 1, Section 6, I believe, it states very clearly religious institution, morality, piety, and having reverence for God in the public square. Very much there. Go look it up. It's really, really cool. So I wanted to clarify some of that because I feel like so many times, I even had debates in high school, going into Merrimack High, where there were so many conversations going on, and I tried to tell people over and over, I said, you gotta be kidding me. You guys don't know these things? I wasn't even trying to be mean, I was just trying to explain to people. I said, no, it is found nowhere. We were taught things, and which, I didn't really agree with, but the point being, we have to have truth, you know what I mean? We have to be able to know where we stand on these issues. And knowing the foundation of America is very, very important. Very important. That way we know where we stand. Because if you lose the foundation, then anything can change. There was actually a quote from George Washington, and I can't even paraphrase it. It was also in a book from Glenn Beck, where he basically George Washington talks about the Constitution, and he specifically says, we purposely wrote the Constitution in a way that it could not be misinterpreted. We did everything we could. It's not a perfect document, but we made sure when we wrote in the articles and the different sections, we tried to put these things in so they would not be misinterpreted. And sure enough, over time, things get misinterpreted. So we have to bring these truths back to our houses. We have to bring them back to our schools. The last point I wanted to bring up was principles and foundations. One of the things I wanted to talk about specifically to that is standing for what you believe in. I'm sure it can be a touchy subject to some people, but I'm about to go really crazy on you here in a second. No one stands up for what they believe in anymore. You know what I mean? I'll take, for instance, gay marriage, which could be a very, very touchy subject to people. I will, however, let you know that the Bible is very much against it. Now, the reason why that is because there's a thing called inheritance talked about in the Bible, and God is very much for inheritance. It's all through the Old Testament. There's also this thing called reproduction, be fruitful and multiply, as it says in Genesis. And there are reasons why the Bible is against it. Now, I'm not going to go in depth on that specific topic. I'm just bringing up an example. But I've talked to people before, friends, several in particular, who have said before, yeah, I used to be against it, but I don't know anymore because I have a friend or a brother or a family member who has chosen that path, chosen to live that way. And they say, so I really don't know. So I ask them, I say, so you didn't have any principle to begin with? And they say, well, no, I do have principles. I value. I don't know. I don't know really where I stand on it anymore. And I'm like, that's what principles are for. Principle means no matter what your feelings tell you, you are willing to stand firm on that and not move from it. And we've lost that. Our young generation, we don't know what to believe anymore. We walk around, we talk about things, we go on, we say, I'm going to be flipping on this issue. I'm going to take this stance, or whatever it may be. The same thing with different things like abortion or guns or God in America. And I feel like so many times people just don't understand really where they stand on the issue. Because God wants us to believe in His Word. He put that there for a reason. You know what I mean? And I try so many times to tell people, I try to explain to them what words mean. Words like respect. I'll talk to somebody and they'll say, I respect your opinion, but I just don't know about it. And I'm going, do you even know what the word respect means? Do we? Do we really know what it means? Respect means to hold in high regard, to value. I said it in the last show with my dad. We don't respect anybody's opinion anymore, which is fine, because that means if say I'm against abortion and you're for it, well, you obviously don't value my opinion because you want people to have the choice to abort their baby. I don't value that, so therefore I don't respect it. I don't hold that in high regard because that is not a value to me. That opinion is against what I believe. But, however, I will tolerate your opinion, and I respect the fact that you have an opinion. I respect you as a human being. So we have to know when we're throwing these words around that we know what they mean. Open-minded is another one. People say, oh, we're open-minded. You need to be more open-minded. You need to be much more open-minded than you are because you're so close to it. Open-minded means being receptive to new arguments and ideas. I'm sorry, but gay marriage and abortion are not new ideas. They're not new arguments. They've been around forever, and we know the results. And so the Bible specifically tells us why they're wrong and why it's against it, why God has not put those in motion. God has created man for a purpose, and when we sit there and abuse these purposes, we kill ourselves off, through more lack of morality or whatever. So we have to know how we stand on these issues, right? And again, I'm not just going to stand on those two topics. They're just, like I said, examples. We could talk about guns, whatever. But as I said, this episode is to really focus on some of that. And with a few minutes left, I want to explain to people, what pulling God and government together. God cares about our government. He cares about you, every one of you watching right now. We have to know when to say no. You know what I mean? We have to stand up for what we believe in. We've got to be honest. Now, as a person, I'm very honest with people. If I have a private conversation with somebody, I'll tell them things that, that I think they should know. I'm not afraid to give my emotions and feelings out. Some people could probably call me weird for that. You're not a man. I cry. I love to cry. It's a great thing. But we have to learn how to be true to ourselves. And if we don't have a foundation to stand on, if we don't have principles we're standing on, and things we value like that, we're going to constantly make mistakes. We'll do that anyway, but we're going to make a lot more of them than we really need to. God is there to guide us with His Word. He's there to guide us and make the choices that we need to make. That's why you read the Bible. That's where you read His Word, so you can go in and figure out, oh, right, does my decision line up with the Word? No, not this time. But I feel this way. No, we don't go off feelings. We go off what the Word of God says, because feelings get us messed up. Like, let's say you want to go and steal something, right? Or let's say you want to go punch the guy in the face who looked at you wrong in the mall. So you walk up there and boom, you're allowed to hit him. Yeah, but what's going to happen next? Probably security is going to run in and tackle you, and you'll probably get arrested or whatever. But you went off feelings, right? So we know that feelings, at least the way we use them now, don't help us. Now, feelings are there for a purpose, but we're supposed to use them in the proper manner, which is why when you find a nice balance between principle and feelings. Let me explain to you, though, because some of you might be wondering, we use the word principle a lot. Yes, it's your foundation, essentially. Think of this. Principles, they're your map, and values are your compass. That's your compass. So you kind of weave between the map. You stay within the map so you don't veer off from them. Because what happens when you veer off the map? You get lost. That's what happens. So we have to know where we stand with these things, because they're destroying us as a nation, and we have to learn how to stand up for what we believe in. I tell you what, I'm not going to back down, because I love my nation. I love you guys watching, even though you might completely disagree with me. I will provide a way of communication, such as email or Facebook or whatever, probably in the next show. But I'm just going through the logistics now with it. But I want to leave you guys with that, because so many times so many of us don't understand what true government is. So many of us don't understand what principles are. We're willing to back down. We're willing to compromise. I actually mentioned the other day about perspective, gaining a new perspective. A lot of people believe when they talk about being respectful or being open-minded, they say, I think I gained a new perspective. I'm totally for this issue. And you're going, what do you mean? They may take a stance on abortion, different stance, than they used to. I at least respect, remember, hold in high regard and value. I at least respect the fact that someone stands firm on what they believe, even if I totally disagree with it. At least you're standing firm on something. Good heavens. Hardly anybody does that anymore. We have congressmen, one in particular, who found out that his son was involved in some activity, specifically homosexuality, and he didn't believe in it. And then all of a sudden, when he finds out that that's the case, he went back on it. He had totally abandoned his principles. You know what I mean? And that's wrong. I don't value that at all. Our leaders already do that all around the world. They already lied to us. We don't need more people coming to lying. You know what I mean? So we have to understand these things. We have to really focus on what we believe and what our foundation is. We cannot back down, because we're losing our nation as we speak. We have to have leaders who are willing to rise up, young, old, middle-aged, whatever have you. And I value that very much. I value our founding fathers. What I always tell people is, what would our founding fathers do? They would roll over their graves if they knew what we were doing, the things we were voting on, the people we were putting in, all across the board. So we have to know where we stand. I keep saying that because I want to drill that into people. Even if you totally disagree, at least, like I said, I respect the fact that you stand where you stand. So with that said, I will see you guys next time on my next show, and we will focus on different issues, more specific topics, and I'll leave you with that. God bless, and God bless America, and let that be known. Goodbye.